Hello, MedTech Insight enthusiasts. This is Dr. Jennifer Joe with my co-host, the fabulous Dr. Ami Bhatt. We're excited to be with you after the long holiday weekend. I hope you guys got some rest. We're doing some fun things. I think Ami was watching fireworks somewhere. I tried to watch fireworks. It was not as exciting this year, but it was still fun. When Dr. Bhatt isn't hosting the show, she's running the Massachusetts General Hospital telecardiology program, seeing congenital heart disease patients, and teaching at the Harvard Medical School. When I'm not hosting the show, I see patients in the emergency room, urgent care, and hospitalist setting. We both consult for and support a number of traditional and also up-and-coming digital health startups. We both believe that healthcare can be better both for the clinician and for the patients. You can find both of us giving local, national, and international talks regularly. We're actually doing an interview with a podcast later today. Yep, very excited about it. And we also have our first ever Springer textbook on digital health, which I was looking at some of the previews this weekend. So very exciting. MedTech Insights is a live weekly interactive talk show led by me and Ami, where we interview typically two, but today we're excited to have three digital health guests every Tuesday at 12 noon. It's interactive. So that means we really appreciate and adore the people who watch us, who follow us, who share, and who post who they are, where they're watching from, and any questions that you have. You can watch us on the Facebook page, Ami or my personal Facebook page, Vanguard.Health YouTube page, and my personal LinkedIn. All shows are recorded and available after the fact at our website, Vanguard.Health/MedTech Insights. Be sure to keep up with the show by joining our mailing list and look for us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Over to you, Ami. Glad that you're in the office. You're looking nice, refreshed, relaxed. Yes, I think you went somewhere warm or cold. No, you went somewhere.
I went somewhere cold. I went north. Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay. We had a great weekend. I hope everybody else did too. And nice to start the week out on a Tuesday. Excited for today. And we'll jump right in. We had to have three guests today. One of the things that we love is when we have a digital health technology that is then picked up by clinicians who are in that field and then supported by investors who really understand where the future of digital health is going. And that's who we have for you today. So let me introduce all three, and then we'll bring them out as a group. We have Jim Howard. He is the CEO and co-founder of the startup Readout Health in St. Louis, Missouri. They launched a breath technology that builds a clinical-grade handheld device for in-home testing of breath compounds like ketones to help drive behavior modification in metabolic health. I believe Jen even has one that she's going to show you later. I have one as well.
I think you were sent one, but you are just like a little slow to open boxes.
Maybe we need to do unboxings in order to get me to open some of these fast enough.
Oh, we have to do
That's
unboxings.
Not a bad idea.
Okay.
We also have Dr. Charlie Cavo. He runs a metabolic center called Pounds Transformation in Central Connecticut. He's been running it for 8 years now, far ahead of the curve in terms of thinking about metabolic health. The great thing about thinking about our patients is we've really had a lot more patient self-advocacy happen in the past decade. People really taking a look at their own health and trying to understand it better. COVID has somewhat accelerated that. So people really are much more interested in what they can do, not only for their own heart health, which I'm interested in, or avoiding emergency room situations like what Dr. Joe deals with, but really thinking about what makes me healthy long-term. And nutrition and exercise have been at the center of that for a lot of people. And to really take some scientific rigor to that for the patient, direct to the consumer, is an area that digital health is foraying into. So we'll get to talk about that today. And then we have Phil Gager. So Phil is managing director at Stifel Bank. He's played an active role in the New England venture ecosystem since 2000, supporting both VCs and entrepreneurs. Phil has held originations and leadership roles at Capital Advisors Group, Square One Bank, and currently Stifel Bank. In addition to his day job as a venture banker, Phil's an active angel investor. He enjoys matching promising companies with smart money. And he was a little league champion when he was younger. So we're still very proud of that. And we put it at the end of his resume every time. So I think, Jen, why don't we'll bring all three out at once. And one important thing to note is that for both Dr. Joe and myself, as well as our guests, we are speaking for ourselves and not for the institutions with whom we have worked, are currently working, or will work with in the future. So with that in mind, let's bring Charlie, Phil, and Jim all out together today. Hi, thank you all for being here. This is so exciting.
Thank you. Hey, thanks.
So
Good afternoon.
why don't let's start in a little bit. We're going to create an order, and we'll start with Jim, because I think it's great to talk about the technology first and the digital health that we're kind of engaging with. But Jim, if you could do us a favor, our audience may not know kind of your history and how you got here. So if you could just give a little preview of what kind of brought you to this point, that would be great. And then we'll talk a little bit about Biosense as well.
Great. I am a 27, 28-year-old health technology veteran in St. Louis. I've been part of a number of startup and successful exits through that. Part of that was in the respiratory diagnostic space. So I heard about, through a venture firm I was working with, a technology that was being developed, ended up engaging with them to fill a technology gap, and that's this ability to track volatile compounds in the breath at a clinical grade. And that's been a kind of a missing component of having a non-invasive approach to chronic disease prevention and management. So it's been fun. It's been a really fun ride, because I do have a ketogenic household. So I was someone that needed that technology gap filled initially, my wife and I. So it made a lot of sense to engage full-time in the project. And here we are today, 2 years later.
Fantastic. So ketogenic diet, really incredibly important. And it's not the only thing that we can sense, from the breath either. But as we focus on that right now, will you tell us a little bit about Biosense itself? Jen, did you want to hold it up and show them? I think you have it ready right there. There it is. That's Biosense. So maybe this is a good time. I think you have a video as well that maybe explains it, but a little bit about how this works for our audience.
Yeah, Biosense is the first medical grade breath technology device that can track ketones, or your level of fat oxidation, as it changes throughout the day. And that's the big part of this, is that your fat oxidation, kind of like glucose, your ketones change quite a bit based on what you do in activity. And you could either use a urine strip, which gives you a range, or you prick your finger multiple times per day, which most people don't want to do. So Biosense, we figured out a way just to only measure just the part of your breath that is actually interacting with your lung tissue. And that's really the secret sauce of this. It's got a pump, has a microphone, has a number of components like that. And then it can give you a highly accurate, high resolution story for the rest of the day. So whereas a pinprick is a snapshot, we're giving you the video of your metabolic picture for the day that goes beyond glucose and insulin control. So insulin's a great place to start. Get your body into a sense that they can start to now burn fat. We actually track that, and it's much more effective than getting on a scale at the end of a week and having results that don't really motivate you. So that's where we kind of fit in. So it's a first non-invasive medical grade device. We had a great clinical trial 2 years ago. I can show a quick video here if you want me to.
Yeah, that would be
great.
And
how it's being used. All right.
And as you're pulling that up, I think one thing for those who may be not actively involved in thinking about the ketogenic diet, not really just for thinking about, weight loss and different forms of being healthy, really a treatment in epilepsy, useful in cancer diagnoses. And so this is, medical grade is actually really important to be able to follow this. For those of you who are just doing it for the sake of doing it, you may not actually achieve ketosis on your supposedly ketogenic diet. So it's actually also a good idea for people to check and take a look.
I think I've been playing with diets for a long time, right? I grew up in Mississippi. There's I think there's a lot of pressure for women to be skinny, but I felt like there was very Southern pressure on me to be skinny. So I've definitely been dieting since I was 14.
Adolescents out there, please do not listen to Dr. Joe.
I just think it's the societal pressures that play on us. And so I've definitely been through the different fads. I've been fascinated by the concept of ketoneogenesis and ketogenesis for a long time. There's great data in a lot of different places, but I personally just feel like it makes me feel good. I have a good energy level. Old school way to do it is the urine strips. This is the first time I've ever had a breathalyzer, which is fascinating in terms of the technology and the accuracy. So yes, Jim did send it to me because I said that I was fascinated, and I gained what I call the COVID-19. Not quite 19, but it was close. And so I've been actively trying to lose it. And I I'm really excited about the breathalyzer, but mostly the engagement you get by like tracking it, but then like being like, oh, why did it go up today? And then you get learning pushed to you in a meaningful way in a time that's engaging. The most profound piece to me was, there's the juice diet. So I was intermittently playing with the little juice diet, and they say with the juice diet, don't exercise. So I wasn't exercising, and I was doing this intermittent fasting and kind of a really juicy diet. And I was just hitting like the ACE measurements of like 3 or 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
You add exercise to it, boom, it changes everything. I was hitting ACE like 10 or 15. And I was like, why didn't I just exercise?
but this
do,
is,
do a little bit more, and then you'll be up where like epileptic patients are in the 30 and 40 range. So
really?
And that's where they need to be. And that's where they need to be, right? I think it's really important for healthcare as well, for people who have illness to be able to know that they're not going to suddenly, fall into an episode if you're somebody with epilepsy because you weren't in the right target range, and that it affects their quality of life. It also affects their health overall. So I think so important to know. Jim, how we doing on the video? We feeling okay?
Yes, I thought I just played it, but I guess I didn't.
So. Okay.
Let's try it again.
You did share it. I was about to bring it in, but I was talking and I got involved with talking about
So
myself.
it's just a quick.
We're going to let go of Jennifer's diet now.
And I ignored the click here.
Yeah, so it's only 15 seconds, but this is just a professional shot.
Great, let's do it.
Okay.
All right.
So adding it to the stream, you just need to go into perfect, and you just, if you will, play the audio with it.
Sure.
So there is a little button that says click here if you want to share audio when you do it.
Okay.
So maybe unshare it. It's good. So I never hit over 2 or 3 for like a month. And then I started exercising. And then I was like rocking out at like 10, 15. It was amazing.
So now that you're bringing this up, Jen, as we're fixing the audio, Charlie, let me ask you a little bit, because Pounds Transformation, it's been 8 years that you've been doing this, and you were one of the first people who came to Jim, or Jim came to you. I'd love to hear how this happened. And you said, yes, this is going to be clinically relevant, right? Not just a great digital idea, not direct to consumer, but this is going to be clinically relevant in a practice that focuses on it. So maybe let's take a pause for 1 second as we fix the audio. And Charlie, if you'll chime in, tell us a little bit about how you decided to do Pounds Transformation, where you came from, and then how you kind of met Jim and started thinking about using this clinically. You are muted, Charlie. We have to unmute you. There we go. Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah. So I was an OBGYN for about 20 years, and my patients were consistently getting more unhealthy, and we were doing a lot of C-sections and delivering babies that had problems with blood sugar control. And so in any case, I was big into nutrition and shifted gears and started a metabolic medical practice, basically with a couple patients, first in our home, in our kitchen, and the practice exploded very quickly. And I left my OBGYN practice and just opened up more metabolic medicine practice. From 2 patients, we went to tens of thousands, and we were featured in a movie, The Magic Pill. And we just have been shifting gears and trying to pivot and keep up with what people know about food. And I think what you said was so important, that people are really becoming advocates for their own health, because we as physicians, we're so busy moving patients in and out of exam rooms, that patients thankfully are becoming more aware of what it means to be metabolically healthy and asking good questions rather than just accepting medications and getting older. So in any case, our practice has been pretty successful here in central Connecticut, managing people and their nutritional sort of medical needs. And one of the things I came across our desk was Biosense. I don't remember exactly how it came across my desk. I was doing some research for something, and I stumbled into this device that was analyzing ketones, and we were using finger sticks for ketone management at the time. And
you guys were using finger sticks as opposed to urine?
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
okay.
the urine was just not as, I don't
As a
think
nephrologist, I just anchor on urine. I think urine is the gold standard for a lot of things, but okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just kind of into a different device for checking ketones and stuff. Urine, no problem. But in any case, the Biosense was great because people didn't have to use blood. You could do the breath as many times as you wanted over the course of the day. You could really get a fantastic sense of biofeedback and make changes in your nutrition based on the what you're finding from your Biosense. So it was great. So we had a few patients try it with a hypothesis that would just basically say, look, if patients are blowing over 5s and they were being consistent and we could track them and educate them with regards to what it means and what it takes in order to be successful, we'd see a lot more consistent results. And although we don't have the studies or numbers out yet, we certainly think that all the observations that we made in the practice have been really, really helpful for patients to utilize the Biosense. And then we implemented it into our remote patient monitoring system. So Jim's company was nice enough to help us with our remote patient monitoring. And now the remote patient monitoring that we do links directly with Biosense, and we get the information back to our computers so we can start to establish patterns that we can see differently than what patients can see as we're monitoring them remotely. So I think that the whole technology of utilizing things like Biosense and remote patient monitoring are just in such a unique place right now in medicine that it just made sense to bring the two of them together to help.
That is fantastic, Charlie.
Yeah.
So many things to talk about. So one is I love origin stories, right? Jim had a family reason that ketosis was important. An incredible history of over 2 decades in this field. And realized that there was something that was missing, that was not working, because both it was not patient friendly in terms of, peeing on a stick or drawing your own blood.
You don't think peeing on a stick is patient friendly?
But it wasn't accurate enough, right? It didn't get you exactly. It didn't get you exactly what you need to do. It got you a range. We then think about Charlie, who, to all the clinical entrepreneurs out there thinking about doing something different, from OBGYN. Is now, a decade into a metabolic program that is incredibly successful in Central Connecticut and very well respected. And those of you who haven't seen the movie should see the movie. It's actually very interesting. But when we think about origin stories and how this brings us together, we also think a lot about who you're investing in, right? So you guys are investing in your patients, but then somebody has to support you. Somebody has to be there to say, you've got the right technology, you've got the right idea, you have the right concept of your patient populations. Incredibly important to be able to see that. And so I do want to be able to bring Phil into the discussion a little bit, because Phil has had this ability after working with a number of different companies and really being in the kind of VC entrepreneur world for so long, at what does it look like to go the distance when you're talking about implementing digital health? When we say RPM, the kind of RPM you're talking about, right? Remote patient monitoring with Biosense at home for this, that is a new level. But there is not an investing plan for anybody out there, right? There are people who do health, there are people who do tech, and then there is this new thing that you are creating. So Phil, maybe from you, a little bit about your history, how you ended up doing this, but really how you think about that intersection of why is it that we're now supporting health tech? How are we doing that? And how does your industry grasp that and understand how to make heads or tails of companies and what's going to work?
For sure. Thanks, Ami. My origin story, I sound like a superhero, but anyhow, going back,
Just own it.
I've been privileged to be in this generalist role for the last 20 years in the VC ecosystem. And what I mean by that is I've invested or loaned money in my seat as a venture lender to SaaS companies, to consumer companies, to companies that operate on that model. I've loaned money to healthcare companies as well, where I've spent a lot of time with diagnostic, biotech, and device companies. Now, when you put those two Venn diagrams together, you kind of get digital health. The issue is that when these general partners of the funds go out to pitch their potential investors, they kind of have had to identify themselves as one creature or another. And I think the market, there was an opportunity to arbitrage that market a bit. And that's what I identified 2 and 3 years ago when Jim and I started talking was, hey, this is a guy with clinical expertise who's got something with mass appeal for that biohacker audience, but has massive value to clinicians like the folks at Pounds. So that was the draw, and that's been an unintentional theme in my portfolio because as an angel investor, I was able to get access to these deals that tech and life science VCs were kind of scratching their head and saying, is this fish or fowl? You know, what do I make of this company, and which partner do I provision on this board who has any expertise? And the answer was not really anybody, because it hadn't been done at that point.
They're still scratching their head, Phil.
They're still scratching their head, but I think there's a lot of strategic interest, one, and I do think VCs are coming around to it, and you're starting to see some exit stories that really, you know, validate that this is a need. So and further, I'm just really interested in the confluence of people taking responsibility for their health, which is kind of that consumer biohack, but then also caregivers being able to see a dashboard that allows them to coach you know, people through it. So I think it's an exciting time.
I love this. So one of the things, Jim, as we kind of focus on what you talked about in terms of remote patient monitoring is there's two things that happen, right? One is we talk a lot about just wearables, right? And we talk about this idea of just people have this thing, they can measure and they can move on. And then you ask clinicians to bring those wearables into their clinical daily work and algorithm. And that's really hard because those things were not created for clinical management, right? They're not outcomes associated with it where we can say, I know and trust that this is guiding me the right way. And so to really create a brand of digital health that is, yes, patients can be actively involved and they can see what's happening, but at the same time, this is clinical grade. This is something where there is research out there that can support the fact that a doctor is going to make decisions based on it. And I think that is the field that you are creating, that Charlie's able to use and that Phil's investing in. And I think that might very well be the future, which is really exciting. Jim, how are we doing on the volume on that video? And can we try it one more time or should we let it go?
I can pull it up, but to be honest with you, I do.
No, all right.
It's ready to go. I can speak through it if you want me to, but
why don't we do that? Just so people really get a sense.
Cool. Yeah, so
we've gotten to play with it, but they haven't.
Yeah, essentially, I mean, ketones change based on which your fat oxidation movement is going to be based on activity that you do, and this is what's been the missing piece to modify behavior. This is all about behavior modification, and essentially.
Did you have a video that you could talk through?
Yeah, let me do that. All right, I'm pulling this up right now.
Perfect.
All right. And by the way, it's people like Charlie that it's critical that they give the feedback, because I cannot impress upon everybody enough that you can build something and it's great. And in digital health, there's a million different applications out there and devices that can support them. But if you don't have that clinical workflow nailed down, and specifically with how the physician is going to use that and then monitor their patients and or coach to them, it's such a missing component on here. And we've learned a lot working with early adopters like Charlie, who are more interested in disease reversal, quite frankly, than they are in just the ongoing treatment, like especially in the obesity marketplace. Obesity, type 2 diabetes reversal. So, all right, let me just kind of speak through this. So this is where you see really trends change throughout the day. And your journey with ketosis, let me go back to the beginning. You have to measure multiple times per day. And that's the bottom line. Just 3 to 5 measurements can show a true resolution of what your body's response is to food and exercise. At the highest level, this is a simplistic way of the gap that we're filling in.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
So Jim, when we're talking about, doing this, I think a few things that actually, no, let's go to clinicians first. That clinicians will want to know. I'm going to take a step back because I'm seeing a comment here that's of some clinicians that are asking some questions. So for clinicians who don't want to leave and be an entrepreneur, we've had some great shows with clinicians who said, I practiced and then I left practice in order to do blank. because I saw a need, right? But not everybody wants to do that. Many people want to keep clinically practicing and yet be involved. So let me ask that question first, because our audience would like to know. From your perspective, Jim or Charlie, if there are physicians out there who are interested in innovation, is there a role for them? How do they reach out to people like you? How do they find a chance to be that person who will test something and give you feedback so that they feel that they are feeding that innovative need of theirs while they're still practicing? And then I will just say the same question to Phil, which is, it kind of sounds like some of these VC firms could use somebody on their deck that understands both the health landscape and the digital technology. If there are those who are willing to leave but don't have their own product, don't want to be an entrepreneur, what's the route for a clinician to end up in VC? It feels like digital health might be a great place for a clinician to say, I'd be the one who wants to sit on that company. So maybe Jim first and then to Phil.
Yeah, and actually Jennifer could probably answer this because she has tons of herself. But I would say that if there are clinicians that can complete the story, and that story is that with data, you can monitor adherence to a protocol. So in obesity specifically, a protocol is given to a patient. No one really knows if the protocol is being followed. Certainly, there's not a motivational impact of someone, looking at a device and saying, wait a minute, it's working, little baby step. Those little baby steps and rewards that lead to weight loss, for example. If a clinician can complete that story, and Charlie does it really well in just a conversation, I don't think he's leaving his practice though. But if somebody could do that, there's always room to bridge the gap of technology and with the actual user. And sometimes the user is the in-home patient. Sometimes the user is the adoption at a clinical level, like in Alzheimer's right now. Biosense is using Alzheimer's, really driven by the clinic, not so much the patient. So there's a high touch to that. So that's my thoughts. Charlie, what do you think?
I think that if you identify a need and then you find a product that might offer a solution, it certainly doesn't hurt to try it yourself. And if you have a practice that you have some control over with regards to what you can bring on board to sample some of the, university settings, there might be some hurdles that you got to jump over and some obstacles. But, if you have a good reason to try a product that you come across and you want to reach out, like I did basically to the CEO, I said, hey, I don't know you and you don't know me, but I think what you've got here is amazing. And I want to bring it to my practice and see what happens. You never know what the response is going to be. And when we first met, I had no idea that I would ever, be in a place where, we've now put the two together with remote patient monitoring, and we're seeing the benefits of patients. We're able to avoid complications of patients on certain medications. We're using the Biosense to keep themselves from being at risk for acidosis and that sort of thing. And we can make significant adjustments through that. And I never knew that would happen just from reaching out and trying something. So I guess to the person asking the question, I'd say, hey, look, if you see something out there and you think there's a need, make a contact, reach out. You don't have to just jump all in and be an entrepreneur. You certainly can help your patients by being curious and finding an answer.
Fantastic. I think our clinical audience is excited to hear that. Jen, any other comments you were trying to put up? And otherwise we'll turn to Phil.
We just have Jay Dreyer. Thank you, Jay, for watching. Founder of CareFlash. Really enjoy when entrepreneur CEO founders watch us. And Jay is working on CareFlash, which is where the community matters most.
Great. All right, Phil, over to you. Those questions that are coming in about clinicians thinking about VC, how to get in, how to help.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I do think there's, the venture market's awash in capital looking for opportunities. And I think nothing, VCs are followers to a certain extent. And once you see a connected device exit that's, unequivocally a success, that's going to give them more of a mandate to start leaning into the space. In the meantime, I think some of the most innovative payers with VC arms are the ones putting money into these opportunities, and because they see it as a real opportunity to bend the cost curve. I've got another portfolio company who just did a pilot program with Kaiser, and they're not thinking about it for a financial return for that investment. They're thinking about it in terms of the percentage reduction in this instance, diabetes care.
Yeah.
Yeah, pre-diabetes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we look forward, actually, that's a great topic to discuss then. As we look forward, we're really looking at chronic disease management using telemedicine and digital health, right? I mean, I think that is where our strength is right now. That is where our growth is. And so your thoughts about, how we're going to do in terms of the types of companies that might do well, since we have you, Phil. You're talking about connected health RPM, but there's, there's healthcare delivery, there's healthcare infrastructure. Where do you think the promise lies or the growth might be fastest?
Well, there's what I want to invest in, and then what other people are going to get great returns on. And some of it's a question of access and capital intensiveness. So the deals that I have really liked are some of these connected devices, because they were a bit unloved in previous years. But now I think the market is wise to that, and they're seeing opportunities there. Some of the larger infrastructure plays in EHR and other, SaaS-like deals, there's plenty of money to back up the truck and dump on those. So I think from an investor standpoint, I'm still excited about this space. And like I said, I think there's a payer case to be made with a lot of these remote monitoring systems that I think at the end of the day, be it 2, 3, 5 years from now, will result in tremendous exits.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
So I'm just going to underscore what Phil said there, because I think in the VC community and in the investment communities, there's the concept of a return to investor, a nice exit, whatever's hot, trendy. I think we saw a little bit with some of those IPOs that came out this last week. But then there's like investing for the good, meaning investing in really cool, innovative, but good ideas that's actually going to transform healthcare in a meaningful way. And I think that's one of our missions, Ami, which is, as clinicians, what's more important for us to support digital health or solutions or innovations that's going to have a return on investment and may or may not be that great for the healthcare community overall, or that we see as truly good for the patient and really doing long-term good for all of us, the community, the patient, the healthcare system. And I think Charles really followed his passion in doing that. In traditional Western medicine, we're just not trained on the data on diets and how meaningful and impactful it can be, and also how it just changes everything from how we feel every day to chronic disease. And Charles made the leap and did it, and then is bringing in really profoundly great technology that, okay, the VC market is I don't know, don't totally get it. There's a lot to wrap my head around. But the clinician market is this has almost zero side effects.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to worry about the sodium, not going to worry about the potassium. I'm not going to worry about bad things happening, which is kind of more of a traditional pharma. And I can really move the needle and improve community health with something that's straightforward and easy. Sorry, that's just my soapbox.
Well, Jennifer, I think to your point, the good investors out there are not going to be looking for evidence in the form of positive investment return. They're going to be looking to talk to Charles and look at that as a leading indicator, rather than retrospectively saying, oh, great investment, let's go do that.
I think that's exactly right. Jennifer, I love your soapbox, because I think it's the right soapbox, right? This is the direction that we're going. And it goes back to, I think behavioral modification is a great thing to think about. I think the phrase itself sometimes strikes me as a little bit negative, because I have a lot of things in my behavior that I need to modify, and I come down hard on myself about those things. Nutrition and exercise sometimes
your
be one
bagel
of the
thing
right,
that you
like. Not
Eat that bagel, blow into the breathalyzer and see your ketones.
No, I don't want to do that.
But, the key thing though is that there's these different steps in that behavior modification, and we have a device, and that our device is empowering our future suite of behavioral prescribed digital therapeutics specific to a chronic disease, typically reversal. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that conversation in my 27, 28 years, we weren't talking about disease reversal. We even have pharma though. I mean, pharma, which we think would be, they'd love for you to be on the medication for the rest of their life. But I mean, it's different right now than it was. And this is really kind of, when it gets back to the societal impact investing, is even pharma, which I think is the leader in digital therapeutics, and I think most of you would agree to that, they're looking at medications now that are disease reversal that could happen pretty quickly. and if you look in the obesity space and some of these GLP-like agonists, they're in this to win this, to permanently get somebody in a place where they may not need medication for the rest of their life. We're in a couple trials right now that start this fall that are in line with that type of medication. That's super, super interesting. And my pharma career, which is the first part of my career, we didn't talk about that. But we also didn't have access to digital therapeutic tools. So.
No, it's true. It also takes us back to a conversation that Jennifer and I love to have, which is that about the social determinants of health. And so you see pharma not only moving in that direction, but also thinking a lot about reducing the frequency of dosing that is needed, right? Can you do this with 4 times a year dosing? Can you do it with twice a year dosing? Right. But in between that, we need a way to measure the efficacy, right, of these drugs in those long periods of time where we're not constantly giving, checking, receiving. The thing about taking daily meds is that there's a constant feedback that just comes from doing it, right? There's a constant check-in. And what we're saying is we want to let the patient be at home and really participate in life and not have to physically come in and see us. Therefore, we want them to have everything they need for their remote monitoring there. And the pharma companies say, yeah, we're okay. We're okay with backing down on the frequency of these meds because we actually think that, and again, the word compliance is like behavioral modification, right? But the likelihood that they will be able to engage with the therapy that may be able to stop or reverse their disease is higher when you lower the bar for how hard it is for people to get their hands on the medication, to remember it, to take it, to participate. And so I think really the digital measurement is so key as a part of how we give therapies, and putting that all together is what puts the power back into our patients' hands, which is so important. We are coming close up on, well, our overtime is always, but I always estimate 12:45 is our time. So maybe what we can do is we can have a couple kind of closing thoughts, because this has been amazing. And I knew that having 3 of you together was going to make this feel short, and yet having 3 of you together is a must, because I think this is the direction the field needs to go in and people need to see this. So maybe we can have Jim, Charlie, and then Phil just give a couple closing thoughts. And in that, a little bit about, for our audience, entrepreneurs out there, clinicians out there, investors, what do you want them to know? Where do you want them to look and go next? So Jim, first to you.
Yeah, I think, well, from an investor perspective, we're a company that's raising a Series A. So, we're interested in having conversations with those, like Phil said, that really understand the prescribed digital therapeutic market enabled by devices and the data that we provide, especially the proprietary type data. That'd be number one. But just in closing, we're just really blessed to be. We're fortunate. We don't, in the clinical space, we're kind of stand alone in some of these areas, and we have people like Phil that came in through a friend of a friend, and then we have people like Charlie Cavo that reached out and said, we've been looking for technology. I think that you have to be super collaborative. And this is for entrepreneurs out there. You have to be super open to what people are looking for on their plate. How do you change their day? And somebody like, an early adopting clinic like Charlie Cavo's clinic is, we have to have this embedded into an EMR, an EHR, and that's something that typically is a taboo to early stage companies. But you have to have that. You have to think of the clinical workflow from the beginning, and that completes the sentence from use of a device to a patient outcome. And without that, you're kind of screwed. So we need people to help us with that. And I thank the two on the call to help enable that. And Phil brought in other investors in our early stages too. So you guys are great. Thank you so much.
Charlie, thoughts from you?
So I think that we talked a lot about pharma and that sort of thing, but one thing I also wanted to just raise awareness about with regards to the Biosense is that our practice in metabolic rehabilitation is pretty much 99% insurance-based. So we rely on insurance companies for compensation. And that's unusual to a lot of people that are exploring, I think, obesity medicine. People are used to paying out of pocket for those kind of services. And I think that's not appropriate. I think that insurances should be helping their patients rehabilitate themselves and focus on primary prevention. And when you think about Biosense, which we've been able to get reimbursed for insurances to have that data come in from our patients and then be able to get the insurance companies to reimburse us for obtaining this information that is clearly helpful for the biofeedback and the behavioral modifications that you can utilize if you know people's numbers is amazing. And I think we need more people out there, like Jim, and pushing the envelope with regards to exploring outside of blood pressures and coming into the office for clinical visits to learn how much sicker they're getting, so we can make our communities healthier rather than just putting Band-Aids on the problem. So that's what I would have to say in closing, that insurance is very helpful with regards to primary prevention when you look at Biosense as well.
Charlie, that's phenomenal and such an important point. So you probably know her well, but Fatima Cody Stanford is an obesity medicine doc. She's on the board of the American Heart Association with me, and she's been talking about the importance of us going to legislators, right? Not just amongst each other in our own collaborations, which we've been doing great with across different groups, but really going to legislators and saying, hey, look, this can be done. If a private insurer can do this, then eventually we're going to have to get to the point where Medicare can do this as well. And this is one of those times where payers have always followed Medicare. And I think this may be one of the times where Medicare is just going to follow the payers because they're going to have to go first. With that, Phil, to you.
Thanks, Ami and Jennifer, for having me and hearing Charlie and Jim talk about the Biosense device and how it's empowering these people to change their lives. And it gives me even more conviction about my investment in Readout. So super pumped for that personally, but also in terms of the societal good that I think it's on the leading edge of. I think, like you say, the payers can be on the vanguard of changing how we get our arms around this problem. Taking a step back for the entrepreneurs out there, it's a tough slog under the best of circumstances to find the right VC at the right time with the right check size at the right stage. You have to kiss a lot of frogs and probably telling you things you already know if you're out there trying to find money. But if you're trying to do it for a connected device, I think it can be even more challenging. I'd offer up that I can be reached at phil@serviceprovidercapital.com, and I am out there talking to these guys all the time and figured who's got money, who's ready to write checks, and happy to give you some guidance on where to go in that vein, because I think it is a bit of an odyssey to find the right pool of capital for the opportunity.
That's fantastic. Thank you all so much. I mean, it's a great experience for us. I know our audience has really enjoyed this, but each of you has done so much to advance the field of really digital health technology from your own vantage points, and to see the collaboration of the three of you working together. We hope that everybody we have on the show eventually gets to do this, right? Because this is really what we're all striving for, and it's going to make an incredible difference in patient outcomes, which is why at the end of the day, we're all here. Jennifer, Joe, I will give you the last word.
Really appreciate everyone coming on. Really love seeing the collaboration here from entrepreneur working very closely with clinician. And then also, we need people to support our ideas. So thank you, Phil. But the funders who believe in it and believe in making community health better and really driving it forward. Really excited to have you guys. Excited to have all of our followers at MedTech Insights. You can find us again next Tuesday at 12 noon. Thank you to everyone and have a good day.
Thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.